at the idea that we are all ministers in the body of Christ. Our priority is not to be ministered to, but to minister. Now, usually when we think of a minister, we think of a professional person, a paid person, a person like me. Traditionally, we have made the distinction between pastors or clergy and as the ministers and everyone else as the laity. But in the Bible, actually, the word laity means all of us. It means the people of God. And we looked at the passage last week in 1 Peter 2, which says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the laity. Now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." Now, the laity often don't think of themselves as ministers, but it's actually the laity who are the ministers, because they are the people of God. And every one of us in the church, you, me, everybody else, are those people. And when we look through the Bible, we find passages, and they're talking about the power of God being expressed through the people of God, through the laity. In the Bible, we find when there were needs that needed to be met, when there were issues that needed to be addressed, it wasn't the leaders per se that were to address it, were to meet it. It was the people of God. It was all the people in the church. The church was never meant to be a place where all of the people are not ministers. Did you follow that? Which means we are all ministers. Last Sunday I gave you two examples of this idea. One was the way that you have ministered to me and my family during this time when my wife first learned she had breast cancer, then had the surgery, and now is in recovery from that experience. And during this time, in the last month, you have done countless things for us. You have prayed for and with us. You have sent cards. You have delivered food. Some of you have cleaned our house, called on the phone, visited with us in the hospital at our house, and a few of you have even sat with Brandon, our son. I mean, anybody could do these things. You don't have to be qualified. You don't have to be on a committee or a board to be able to do these things. You don't have to have a position to do these things. People have simply seen the needs that we have had in our family, and you have worked to meet those needs in whatever way you can, and we are very, very thankful. And then I shared for you an example last week from the life of John Ensley in our church. John's part of an off-road vehicle group, and he has become the life mentor to those people. And one of them approached him a few years back about help regarding his marriage. And John's first reaction was what? Was to call me and say, "Pastor, I know this guy. He needs help with his marriage. Can you help him?" That's what he expected to do, and he expected to be able to leave it at that and just go doing his normal stuff. But I didn't receive it that way. I turned it back to him and I said, "John, I think you need to be doing this. But I'm not qualified. I haven't been to school and I don't know. I haven't taken courses on marriage counseling." I said, "But John, you're married and you have a marriage that works. Why don't you share your experience with him?" So he did. And this is what he said. He wrote this and I read it last week. He said, "I did meet with this young couple. I did give them the history of my life with God and my marriage to Kathy and the love that both my wife and I share for Christ and his love for us. And I pointed out verses that are my go-to in the Bible when I'm coping with doubt, pain, anguish, depression. My talk with him," he says, "happened 6 years ago. And I can report that after another 6 years, that couple is stronger in their faith and they are together in their family decisions." Now, John is not a professional minister. John has never been to school to study this. John does not get paid to do this. It's not his job. He has another job. But John is a minister. So just what is a minister? Last week we began to define this idea, and I used the definition by an author by the name of Rick Russo as a start, and this is how he defines ministry. Ministry is simply meeting someone else's needs with the resources God has given to you. Ministry is simply meeting someone else's needs with the resources God has given to you. God has created each one of you with unique abilities. And He has created them so that you can use them in ministry to other people. In fact, there's side benefits to this. Satisfaction and fulfillment in the Christian life come as you use those resources to meet the needs. Also, the church is built up, we talked about last week. But ministry is doing things not just in an official capacity. Ministry is not just because you're paid to do it. Ministry is not just because you're on a board or a committee or you have a position or a ministry or whatever it is, an official capacity. But ministry is anything that you do, official or non-official. Sometimes it is done because we're in a position in the church, but sometimes it's not. I was talking to a couple this week about this concept, and I was listening to them describe what it is that they do in our church. And as I listened to them, I thought, this is a perfect example of what we're talking about here, because they as yet do not have any official positions, or they're not on any boards or committees or any of that stuff. But as I listened to them, I thought, you guys are doing ministry in all kinds of positions and places and needs throughout the church, even though it's not an officially recognized position that you have. Some of the things they were doing was they send cards, they make calls, they make visits, they make meals, they give rides. They see needs and they meet them. It's as simple as that. So again, let's develop this idea of a minister today that we all are. What is a minister? And today I want to focus on a different word. A minister is a servant. In fact, the word in the New Testament that we translate as minister also can be translated as the word servant. The word has a few meanings. It is a slave who gives his or her life for others, meaning taking care of their smallest needs, or it can mean actually giving your life for someone else. A servant who is a person who is in the service of their master. They are under obligation to obey, to work for the benefit of the master. The work is not done by force, but because you willingly choose to serve your master. A servant does menial tasks. A servant runs errands. If you look at the list of people in the Old Testament, names that you would recognize who are also described as servants, here's the list. They were called servants. Abraham, Moses, Joshua, Caleb, Samuel, David, Elijah, Isaiah were all called servants in the Old Testament. The word translated as servant in the Old Testament is a person who is at the complete disposal of someone else. It means a person who has given up all personal rights to serve. Now, I've listed some names here, but who is the ultimate model for us of a servant in the Bible? If you don't know the answer, just say Jesus. All right? That's how it works. Now we get to our passage. One day, the mother of two of Jesus' disciples came to Jesus, and she had a request. Jesus, I'd like you to do something for my boys. I like my boys. I think my boys have done well. And so I would like you to do something to exalt, to lift up my two sons. Verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons, James and John, came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it you want? He asked. She said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. What was her request? Jesus, I want you to honor my two sons in heaven. When we get to heaven, and they're there with you, I want you to give them places of honor. Because, Jesus, ministry is all about what's in it for you. And my sons have ministered for you, so I believe that according to that definition, then, you should exalt them, you should lift them up, you should honor them. That's what ministry is all about. We need rewards. That was her definition of ministry. And Jesus corrects it. Verse 22. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or my left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, to give his life as a ransom for many. Ministry is not about what others can do for us. Ministry is about what we can do for others. And here we have the prime example of this concept. Jesus, think of it, Jesus, God in human flesh, the Son of God, the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of Man. If there was anybody should have been lifted up and exalted, it should have been Jesus. But in fact, he says, I'm going to give my life away for everyone else. I didn't come so that people could take care of me, could do things for me. I came to do things for everyone else. I came to give the ultimate sacrifice, to give my life to pay for people's sins. I did not come to be served. I came to serve. The minister is a servant. Ministering is about looking for opportunities to serve other people. It's not waiting to be asked. It's being proactive. It's looking for opportunities. And in regards to serving in the church, it's looking for opportunities even when you're not on a committee to do that. Even when you're not on a board or in a position or in a ministry to do that. It's about taking the initiative to do it even if you're not supposed to do that officially according to the church. So I was thinking about this concept, and I thought of a couple different areas in our church in which we could think of ourselves as ministers, and how would that actually be? The first thing I thought about was the buildings, the facilities that we have in our church. Now, we have people, official people, who have been designated or elected or hired to take care of our buildings. We have the trustee board. We have the custodians. It's their job to take care of the facility, right? Now, God has blessed us with a large facility. And in fact, it is so large and has so many needs, and I know this because I sit in on these meetings and listen to all this stuff that needs to take place, that oftentimes the trustees and the custodians cannot get to all the stuff that needs to take place. So a way to minister around the buildings, a way to serve around the facilities, is to just look and see what needs to be cleaned, repaired, replaced, pulled, swept, put away, and just taking the initiative to do it. Now, sometimes we may need to ask, is that okay? Because somebody else may have a different idea. But I have a sneaking suspicion that if you were to ask somebody, can I do this? They would be blessed by your request. When we think of ourselves as the minister in the church, we begin to look at the church differently. We begin to look at the church as our house, our home. And we begin to treat the church the way we would treat that place where we live all the time. And then I thought of another aspect to this, another place where ministry can take place, where service can take place. And it's in relation to people who come and visit our church on Sunday morning, Wednesday night, but primarily I'm thinking of Sunday morning. Welcoming people when they come to the church is a huge ministry. And in fact, I've talked to many people and heard it many times. They said that the way that they felt welcome or not welcome was the deciding factor as to whether or not they came back. So if they walked into the door and they felt unwelcome, the likelihood of them coming back is very, very small. Now, we recognize that in our church, and so we have a schedule of people who stand at the door on Sunday mornings. They are the greeters. They're the official greeters, and it's their job that they have volunteered to do, to greet you at the door with a smile, a handshake, and a bulletin, and just to make your entrance into the building a welcoming experience. And they do a great job. But we can be tempted to think that since we have people who are on the schedule to do that, that we don't have to do that, because that's their job. But the reality is that welcoming takes place not just at the front door, it takes place throughout the entire experience that they're here. We can all give them a smile, a handshake, and maybe not a bulletin, but a friendly conversation. We can, when they come in, invite them to sit with us. We could, I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, we could actually make room for them in our pew. Yes, I said it. I said it. I know. You've gone too far. We could actually make room for them to come and sit in my pew. I'd love to have you sit with me. And we can do things like point out things they need to know. Here's the hymnal, and there's a Bible in there, and there's a registration pad down at the end. And then we can point out things in the building, things they need to know if they have kids by mini churches down here and nurseries over here. And ABC kids will be later on, and they'll go downstairs. And you need to know probably where the bathrooms are. There's one up there and down there. And if you need to go downstairs, there's an elevator. Why not give them a tour? Not maybe before the service, but maybe after the service. We don't need to be on a committee or a schedule to do that. We simply treat people like we are welcoming them into our home, which we are. It's taking the initiative. It's being proactive. Now, I also want to talk about our ministry to each other. We've talked about our facilities. We've talked about welcoming visitors. But what about the way that we minister to each other? How do we do that? And to do that, as I was thinking about that this week, I thought of a tool that you have, that you're handed every week when you walk in this building on Sunday. It's in your bulletin, but it's not the bulletin. It's what's inside the bulletin. It's this. I want you to take that out for a minute. Sometimes when we get handed things every week, the same thing, we tend to forget what we've got. And I wanted to point this out to you today. I believe that this is a tool that you have for being a minister. Now, what do I mean by that? In here are prayer requests, answers to prayer. But primarily I'm thinking of prayer requests. In here are prayer requests that have been submitted to the people who put this together, and they put this together so that you have things in here to pray about for people in our church or things related to people in our church of some sort. And of course, the first thing you do with that is you pray for it. If you use this, you go through this and you pray for these requests. And that's wonderful, fantastic. That's what you're supposed to do. But within those prayer requests are needs. Like, so-and-so just had surgery. Well, what are their needs? Maybe they need a meal. Maybe they need someone to clean their house. Maybe they need a ride to the doctor for follow-up after the surgery. You understand? Within requests are needs. And if these are needs that are local, the likelihood is that you could have some part in actually meeting that need. Imagine this. You could be an answer to a prayer request. All you have to do is look through this, and rather than just looking at this as something to pray about, look behind the prayer request to the need and saying, okay, what ability do I have to meet that need? Put yourself in their shoes for a minute and think, what would their need be right now? What could I do to help meet that need? Maybe what they need is a card or a call or flowers or a visit. Maybe they need a ride to the doctor, or maybe they need maybe it's a financial request. I have heard and seen people who have seen other people's financial needs, and people have gotten envelopes with cash in it with no name on it as to who it came from. I've seen that happen. Some of you have done that. Or maybe you have financial advice ability. You can give them advice on to how to deal with their financial situation. Do you understand? You take this and you look behind the request to the need in the request, and you say, how has God enabled me, given me the ability to meet that request, to meet that need, and I'm going to do it. And I'm not doing it because I'm on some kind of board or committee or position. I'm doing it because I'm the minister of this church. And it's my responsibility. That is my job. We also have people in here, and you'll see them down in the bottom right-hand corner. If you open this thing up, it's people with long-term health needs. Now, these are people who don't just have short-term things that they get over with quickly. These tend to be people who have needs that go on and on and on and on. And you know, and I know, that generally people like that, they tend to get a lot of attention at the beginning, but sometimes that attention can fall off because, well, they're just always that way. So perhaps those people have needs that nobody else is even thinking about because they've moved on to other stuff. So what could I do for a person who has long-term needs? What might they need? Because nobody else is helping them in their situation anymore, and they've been suffering with this for years. Looking beyond the request to the need behind the request. Use this as a guide to being a minister. Not only praying for them. And take the initiative. And take the initiative. I want you to look at this thing just for a minute differently than you probably already do. The way this is put together is generally that the people who put it together, do a wonderful job, by the way, have to solicit information to go in here. And so they get on the phone or they call people or ask people, do you have anything? Can I put something in here? That's usually how it works. They get some submissions sometimes, but most of the ones they have to go after. If this is a document that can help us discern needs that we can meet, we need to take the initiative to put the request in there ourselves, to give people an opportunity to minister. We were talking about this in Sunday school this morning, this idea, and somebody said, well, sometimes we'd like to, but we don't know what the needs are. Well, then we need to take the initiative to put the needs in here so people who are ready to meet needs can find them in here and meet them. Did you follow that? So don't wait to be called or asked. You have the request, then you submit it. You call, you email, whatever you need to do, or you take this lovely little piece of paper that's in the pew in front of you. There's a couple of them in there. See this thing? It's in there. Find it. See it down there? See it over there? It is celebrations of praises and prayers. What concerns, help, or prayer do you need? Are you celebrating in your life right now? What are you praising God for? You fill this out. You can put it in the offering plate, or you can hand it to Kathy or Mary or I or anybody, and they will put this in the prayer bulletin. We've got them here for you. On Sunday, you can fill it out and stick it right in, and there aren't any phone calls or emails or anything. It's right there. You need to take advantage of this opportunity because with this understanding, we need to understand that this document is a living, changing document of the life and ministry of our church. It tells the story of your ministry. It tells the story what God is doing in your life, and it tells the story of what people are doing to meet the needs in your life. We need to own this thing. It belongs to us. It's not just about things to pray about. It is an avenue, it is an opportunity to meet people's needs. It's an opportunity to find ways to be a minister. And we've already got it. You see, we need to begin to look at things differently as ministers. We need to look creatively, proactively, for ways to meet people's needs with the resources and abilities that God has given to us. And not wait for other people to do it and not expect other people are going to do it because it's their job. It's all of our job. We are all the ministers. You know, I think sometimes if we really got that much of what we do officially around here, we wouldn't need anymore because it would just get done. We wouldn't have to create things to get things done because we would just do them. Do you understand the difference in how we are all ministers and how it changes us, but it revolutionizes the church? That's what God has called us to. We are the church. We are the people of God. We are the ministers. So how will we minister this week? Let's pray.